Rick Harrison made a business out of knowing what things are worth. But now, people are asking a dangerous question. Is his own empire losing value? Pawn Stars quietly disappeared in 2025. No big goodbye, no clear reason, just silence. Then his own son, Cory, shocked fans by saying the show was fake and walked away to Mexico for good. Not long after that, Rick's own mother took him to court, accusing him of stealing millions while she was helpless in a hospital bed. And behind closed doors, insiders began whispering something even darker, that Rick may be selling the shop not by choice, but because pressure is closing in. This didn't happen overnight. Loss kept piling up. His father passed away. His son died from addiction. The show that defined his name went on a pause with no return date. And now, the gold and silver pawn shop, the place that started it all, is suddenly surrounded by rumors of sale. So what really pushed Rick Harrison to this point? Is he stepping away because he's ready, or because there's no other option left? And if the shop goes, does that mean Pawn Stars is truly over forever? Stay with us, because the truth behind this decision is far more unsettling than anyone expected. Where it all started. Value before fame. Long before cameras arrived, Rick Harrison understood struggle in a way most people never do. His early life was not stable or comfortable. It was shaped by constant movement, strict rules, and health problems that followed him everywhere. His father's military background meant discipline came first, while his mother tried to hold the family together through repeated changes. Rick never stayed in one place long enough to feel settled. Each move meant a new school, new faces, and starting over from zero. When Rick was still young, his health made everything harder. He began having seizures that struck without warning. Sometimes they came once a month. Other times, they left him weak for days. School became difficult. Sports were out of reach. While other kids spent their time outside, Rick spent long hours in dark rooms, waiting for his body to recover. Those quiet moments were lonely, but they also shaped him in ways no one could see at the time. That isolation changed him. With nothing else to do, Rick turned to books. One book became two. Two became shelves. Reading was not just a hobby for him. It became a lifeline. History books, stories, and old ideas filled the silence. Through those pages, Rick learned how people thought, how power shifted, and how decisions made years earlier could shape the future. Books gave him control when his own body took it away. Over time, reading taught Rick patience. It trained his eye for detail. It showed him that every action has a cost, and every shortcut leaves a mark. These lessons stayed with him. Even as a teenager, Rick did not dream about fame or attention. He thought about value. He thought about how money moves from one hand to another, how markets rise and fall, and how one bad choice can cost more than hard work ever will. Life forced him to grow up fast. When his family lost everything and had to leave Kentucky behind, they didn't move with comfort or backup plans. They moved with fear and hope. Las Vegas was not a promise. It was a risk. The family arrived with almost nothing left, unsure of what tomorrow would bring. But Rick was not shocked by the struggle. He had been preparing for it his whole life. By that point, he understood one truth clearly. Survival depends on adaptation. When plans fail, you adjust. When doors close, you wait or build another one. That belief became part of him. It shaped how he worked, how he negotiated, and how he handled pressure. Every deal Rick later made carried the weight of those early years. This was not luck. It was conditioning. Years of loss, silence, and struggle trained him to think long-term. That mindset explains why, decades later, Rick Harrison makes decisions that seem cold or distant to outsiders. Whether it was business, family, or even the thought of selling the shop, his choices were never driven by panic. They followed a pattern rooted in economics, not emotion, a pattern formed long before fame ever found him. Struggle, hustle, and the business of survival. In Las Vegas, nothing came easy for Rick Harrison or his family. The city looked bright on the outside, but life behind the scenes was rough and unforgiving. Their first shop was small, cramped, and far from impressive. There was barely enough room for customers to stand, let alone feel comfortable. Some days, business was so slow that they made less than $100. On those days, the numbers felt heavy. Rent, food, and bills didn't stop just because customers didn't show up. Rick worked without breaks. During the day, he stood behind the counter, learning how to judge items quickly and talk to people who were often desperate for cash. At night, he took on extra work, repossessing cars just to keep money coming in. Sleep became something he fit in when he could. There was no safety net. If the shop failed, everything failed with it. What truly separated Rick from others wasn't raw ambition. Many people in Las Vegas wanted to succeed. The difference was timing and discipline. Rick paid close attention to patterns. He watched how demand changed and how people reacted when money became tight. When one type of item stopped selling, he didn't complain. He adjusted. When profits dropped, he didn't freeze. He looked for another lane and moved into it without hesitation. This way of thinking stayed with him for decades. Rick didn't believe in waiting for luck to arrive. He believed in preparing for opportunity before it appeared. That belief was tested when the city froze new pawn shop licenses. For most people, that would have meant giving up or waiting without direction. Rick chose a different approach. Every week, he tracked Las Vegas population numbers. He followed reports closely, knowing the law would change once the city reached a certain size. For 8 long years, he waited, watching the numbers rise slowly. Many would have lost focus during that time. Rick didn't. The moment the city crossed the legal limit, he acted immediately. He didn't hesitate. He didn't ask for advice. He moved first. That single decision changed everything. It turned a struggling family operation into a legitimate licensed business with room to grow. It proved that patience, when paired with action, could beat luck every time. More importantly, it revealed something critical about Rick Harrison. He doesn't panic when pressure builds. He doesn't wait for walls to close in before reacting. Instead, he plans to exit early. He studies conditions. He looks ahead while others are still focused on surviving the present moment. This habit became one of his strongest tools. It helped him survive early failure, build long-term success, and navigate moments when everything felt uncertain. That same mindset still defines him today. When pressure rises, Rick doesn't run. He prepares. And that approach to survival explains why his decisions now feel calculated rather than emotional, because they are. The peak. When Pawn Stars printed money. Pawn Stars didn't just change Rick Harrison's life. It reshaped the entire pawn industry in ways few could have imagined. Before the cameras arrived, the Gold and Silver Pawn Shop was just another small business tucked into the streets of Las Vegas. But once the show exploded on the History Channel, everything changed overnight. Suddenly, the shop became more than a local store. It became a global attraction, drawing attention from all corners of the world. Where once they might have seen a handful of visitors each day, the shop now faced lines stretching out the door, filled with fans eager to see history unfold in real time. Tourists were no longer coming simply to buy or sell items. They were coming to witness the legacy of a family that had built something extraordinary from almost nothing. The show's success opened doors Rick had never imagined. Merchandise deals, guest appearances, licensing agreements, and spin-off opportunities poured in. His book, Licensed to Pawn, became a bestseller. The shop's fame made Rick and his family household names. Every week, television screens showed millions of viewers negotiating over rare coins, historical documents, and priceless memorabilia. Each episode demonstrated not just business acumen, but the human side of hustling, strategy, and persistence. Every item sold, every story shared, became part of a carefully crafted narrative that drew people in. And while the business had always been about items of value, it now also became about storytelling, culture, and history, a mix that created something far more profitable than mere pawning. At its peak, the business wasn't just selling objects, it was selling access. Every visitor, whether for a tour, ATD signature, or a glimpse of the stars themselves, contributed to a booming ecosystem of revenue streams. The show made Las Vegas a landmark destination, a place where tourists could step into the lives of people who had mastered both negotiation and survival. Each deal showcased on camera, whether a rare Les Paul guitar or a vintage car, offered audiences not just entertainment, but a connection to the larger story of wealth, chance, and human ambition. The shop became a stage, and Rick Harrison, the central character, in a drama that combined real commerce with carefully framed reality television. But success also introduced a new kind of challenge: dependency. The shop could no longer operate purely as a business. It had evolved into a stage, reliant on the cameras, the storylines, and the public fascination that accompanied them. When production slowed or paused, the consequences were immediate. Foot traffic dropped. Merchandise sales fell. The brand's reach depended heavily on exposure, and in a business built on public attention, silence became costly. Revenue that once seemed reliable became unpredictable, tied not to market demand, but to media presence. What had been an unstoppable climb now demanded constant vigilance, strategic appearances, and calculated media management to sustain the momentum. As the show entered its final seasons, subtle signs of strain began to emerge. Ratings plateaued. Costs for production rose. Maintaining the show's spectacle became more expensive than anticipated. The energy that had once powered daily operations started to wane, reflecting the realities of a reality TV world that had grown saturated and competitive. Attention shifted toward new forms of entertainment, and the once magnetic pull of the shop and its stars began to dull. The cultural and financial peak had quietly passed. The enormous inflow of revenue that had once seemed infinite became a reminder that even the most successful empires can experience slow, almost imperceptible declines. Still, for Rick Harrison, those peak years were transformative. They proved that vision, discipline, and a deep understanding of markets could turn a small Las Vegas pawn shop into a global powerhouse. They demonstrated how media exposure could amplify a business far beyond traditional limits. Yet, even in this moment of unparalleled success, the seeds of future challenges were already present. Dependence on fame, the pressure of public scrutiny, and the fragility of attention-dependent revenue foreshadowed a time when decisions about the shop's future would become far more complicated. A time when even the man who had mastered survival would need to adapt once again. Family fractures, lawsuits, and silent damage. While the pressures of running a high-profile business increased, Rick Harrison's personal life was quietly collapsing around him. The weight of loss and betrayal hit him first from the most intimate corners of his world. His father, Richard Benjamin Harrison Jr., often called the Old Man, had been more than a parent. He was the emotional anchor of the shop, a guiding hand through every negotiation and conflict. When Richard passed away, the foundation beneath Rick's feet seemed to shake. The presence of decades of experience, wisdom, and steady judgment vanished, leaving an emptiness that was impossible to fill. The shop, which had once felt like a place of security and family, suddenly carried a weight far beyond simple commerce. At the same time, challenges emerged in other forms, equally damaging but less visible. Legal issues surrounding the actions of cast members put the brand under scrutiny. Allegations, raids, and controversies made headlines and created whispers behind the scenes. Even though some claims were eventually dismissed or settled quietly, the effect on the public perception of the shop was immediate. Networks, partners, and investors began asking questions. In business, perception matters as much as profit. A reputation built over decades can unravel in weeks when lawsuits and allegations dominate the narrative. Rick, who had spent years crafting a family-oriented image, suddenly faced a reality where trust and credibility could be questioned at any moment. Then came a blow few could have predicted: a lawsuit from within his own family. Rick's mother, Joanne Harrison, filed a claim accusing him of financial manipulation, alleging that her ownership stake in the shop had been taken without proper consent. Whether the claims were accurate or not became almost irrelevant. The presence of litigation alone created waves of uncertainty. Investors and partners viewed the business with caution. Networks, even those committed to the show, paused and reconsidered long-term contracts. Family disputes, especially those that play out publicly, can erode confidence far faster than economic downturns or poor sales ever could. As if these challenges weren't enough, tragedy struck even closer to home. Rick's son, Adam Harrison, battled addiction for years, cycling in and out of rehabilitation programs. Despite Rick's efforts to provide support, guidance, and opportunities, the grip of substance abuse proved relentless. When Adam passed away due to accidental fentanyl and methamphetamine toxicity, the personal loss was unbearable. The grief was not fleeting, it lingered, reshaping Rick's priorities and altering his perspective on life and business. A father who had faced financial struggles, public scrutiny, and industry pressures now confronted the most painful loss possible: the death of a child. That sorrow could not be ignored, compartmentalized, or managed through business success alone. These personal tragedies intersected with the ongoing pressures of running a business in the public eye. The shop, once a symbol of unity, resilience, and collective ambition, became surrounded by tension and uncertainty. Staff members, partners, and regular customers sensed the change. Every negotiation, every deal, even the smallest transaction carried an undercurrent of unease. The Harrison family's private struggles became inseparable from the public narrative of the shop. And in an industry so reliant on trust, attention, and perceived stability, by the time the lawsuits, deaths, and legal complications stacked together, the effect was clear. Public confidence wavered. Family trust fractured. The shop's brand, which had been synonymous with reliability, history, and entertainment, faced a subtle but real threat. Investors questioned their involvement. Networks hesitated on future contracts. Fans noticed changes in energy, tone, and focus. And all of this happened quietly, without grand announcements, but with consequences that rippled through every corner of Rick's world. The business that had once thrived on unity, discipline, and meticulous planning now had to navigate not just market forces, but deep personal upheaval. This was not just a chapter of loss. It was a turning point, a moment when personal grief collided with business reality. It forced Rick to confront one truth. Managing a family empire under public scrutiny is not just about money, deals, or fame, it is about resilience, patience, and survival in the face of relentless, unseen pressures. Every decision, every move, now carried a weight far beyond the counter, reaching into the delicate fabric of trust, loyalty, and the human heart itself. Why selling the shop makes economic sense. Selling the shop is not a sign of defeat or a surrender to circumstances. For Rick Harrison, it is the culmination of decades of careful observation, calculated risk-taking, and a deep understanding of economic realities. The shop, once a small, thriving business, became something far more complex under the weight of fame and the global attention brought by Pawn Stars. What began as a family-owned pawn shop evolved into a multi-million-dollar enterprise. But with success came responsibilities, costs, and vulnerabilities that no single individual can ignore. Rick knows better than most that every empire, no matter how impressive, has a life cycle. Ignoring that reality can turn even a golden opportunity into a costly mistake. Without the show actively running, the shop functions very differently. It is no longer just a place to sell or buy items. It becomes a high-cost tourist destination. Daily operations require more staff to manage visitors, handle merchandise, and maintain appearances. Security is a constant concern when thousands of people pass through the doors every week. Insurance rates skyrocket when the value of goods and the potential for accidents or theft increase. Maintenance costs rise as floors, displays, and historic items demand ongoing care. Meanwhile, public attention, the driving force behind foot traffic and revenue, begins to shrink. The numbers that once seemed unstoppable start to decline. Quietly, almost imperceptibly, but steadily. Each month, without consistent media exposure, chips away at the value of the shop. Rick isn't stepping away from success. He is preserving it. By choosing to sell at the right moment, he ensures that the value accumulated over decades is not eroded by external pressures he cannot control. He locks in financial gains rather than watching them vanish over time. This strategy reflects decades of experience where timing, leverage, and foresight matter far more than emotion or sentiment. Rick has built his empire through calculated moves, whether pivoting in a changing market, negotiating high-stakes deals, or responding to regulatory challenges. Selling the shop now is an extension of that same philosophy. Anticipate change, act decisively, and safeguard what you have built. Leverage is another key factor. By maintaining control of the sale process, Rick can negotiate terms that protect not just the financial aspects, but the legacy of the shop and the family name. He avoids forced decisions that might come later if operational costs continue to rise or if public interest diminishes further. Every decision is designed to maximize outcomes while minimizing risk, a pattern consistent throughout his career. For decades, Rick has understood the economics of pawn deals, the importance of asset value, and how timing can transform profit into lasting stability. Selling at a calculated peak is a strategy many fail to recognize until it's too late. This approach also acknowledges the broader reality of business cycles. Fame and media exposure are volatile. Today's headlines are tomorrow's memories. The shop, heavily dependent on the show and the story it told, cannot sustain the same margins without continuous engagement. Operating costs remain high, while returns become less predictable. By converting a public attraction into a negotiated sale, Rick is turning a potentially unstable situation into a secure outcome. In essence, the sale represents a transfer of uncertainty. He removes himself from operational volatility while preserving financial and reputational capital. Emotion has little to do with this choice. Rick Harrison is not walking away out of disappointment, loss, or disillusionment. He is walking toward strategic security. understanding that every asset, no matter how iconic, has a finite peak. The decision reflects the economic mind that guided him from his earliest days of small deals in Las Vegas to global fame. It is not emotional, it is calculated, it is rational, and it is consistent with a career defined by one principle: play the long game, anticipate change, and protect what matters most. Rick Harrison built his name by knowing when to buy and when to walk away. Now, the biggest deal of his life isn't happening on camera. Selling the shop doesn't erase the legacy. It may mark the end of an era where Pawn Stars ruled television. So, is this the final chapter or just another pivot from a man who's survived worse? Is Rick stepping back to protect his future or preparing for something no one sees coming yet? And without the shop, can Pawn Stars ever truly return? One thing is certain: this decision wasn't made lightly. If you believe this is the end, share your thoughts below. If you think Rick is planning his next move, let us know why. And if you want more deep stories like this, because the real value is always hidden beneath the surface,